I am Lauren Whitaker, 28, and literally last weekend my rep as the family's responsible nurse. Yeah, it totally backfired when Grandma Iris casually spilled Haley's massive identity theft secret at her birthday brunch. The careful peace I'd worked my butt off to maintain for years blew up into a full-on family meltdown right there over poached eggs and mimosas. Haley? Sweet, charming Haley, the one everyone babied since we were kids, straight up demanded I let it slide, like her stealing my identity was just a minor inconvenience. And when I clapped back, the entire room froze, forks halfway to mouths, jaws dropped like cartoon characters. "You're ruining everything, Lauren," my mom shouted, her voice cracking with a blend of embarrassment and rage, her eyes darting around the room at our stunned relatives. "You can't just accuse your sister of something like that." As if my accusation was the scandal, not Haley's 6 years of secretly running up almost $100,000 of debt in my name. As if Haley draining my inheritance to pay for her designer handbags and luxury trips was a minor sibling spat. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Looking back, I guess the signs were always there. Little moments, microaggressions I'd brushed aside as typical sibling rivalry or parental oversight. Haley was always the golden child, effortlessly charismatic, quick to charm her way out of trouble. Me? I was the dependable one, responsible to the point of invisibility, drowning quietly in student debt while working 12-hour shifts at the hospital. Whenever Haley splurged on yet another spontaneous trip or designer dress, everyone laughed it off. "Haley's just Haley," they'd shrug. But if I so much as hinted at needing a break or dared to complain about juggling 3 overtime shifts, the responses were cold stares or patronizing sighs, but nothing compared to the quiet betrayal revealed that afternoon. It started casually, Grandma Iris unwrapping her birthday gift from Haley, a ridiculously expensive diamond bracelet, clearly bought with money she didn't have. My stomach twisted, knowing something wasn't right. How could she possibly afford that? Grandma Iris must have wondered too, because she shook her head softly and said something that shattered our family's carefully constructed facade in a single breath. "Haley, dear, when will you stop spending Lauren's inheritance? That money was for your sister's future, not your little indulgences." It was like watching glass shatter in slow motion. Haley paled, eyes widening. Mom and Dad went rigid. Whispers rippled around the brunch table. Suddenly, pieces clicked together. Strange credit card bills I'd dismissed, loans denied for no apparent reason, and that uneasy feeling when checking my credit score, which always seemed suspiciously lower than expected. "Wait, what inheritance?" I asked, voice trembling. Everyone looked away except Grandma Iris, who patted my hand softly and said, "Sweetheart, you didn't know?" Haley tried damage control immediately, laughing nervously and saying Grandma was confused. But in that moment, a lifetime of feeling second best surged inside me, blazing with a new clarity. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't paranoid. My family had been shielding Haley at my expense, literally. I'd spent years quietly taking hits hoping to keep the peace. But peace built on lies isn't peace, it's denial. No more, I'm done playing nice. So drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost unbelievable. You wouldn't believe what they will do once I make my next move. As I sat alone in my cramped studio apartment later that evening, the silence pressed down on me, thick and suffocating. I'd come here straight from Grandma Iris's brunch disaster, my mind spinning. All I could think was how painfully invisible I'd always been. It wasn't just about Haley stealing my identity or inheritance. It was the culmination of a lifetime spent in her shadow, overlooked by parents who only had eyes for their charming younger daughter. Memory after memory cascaded into my mind, each sharper than the last. Like that time when I graduated nursing school with honors, top of my class after 4 brutal years of juggling classes and part-time jobs, only to come home to a family celebration dominated by Haley's minor modeling gig. Mom and Dad proudly displayed her glossy photo shoot in the living room, while my diploma sat forgotten on the kitchen counter. Or the Christmas when Haley announced she'd landed a bit part in a local commercial, and everyone reacted like she'd won an Oscar. Meanwhile, my acceptance into a prestigious cardiac nursing program, a genuine milestone I'd dreamed of for years, barely got an acknowledging nod. I remembered vividly how Dad shrugged and said, "That's nice, Lauren. At least you'll have job security," before quickly turning his attention back to Haley's excited chatter. Each flashback left me feeling smaller, my chest tighter. Haley never had to try. Her smile, her easy laugh, her charismatic way of turning any conversation to her advantage. She was always effortlessly adored. Meanwhile, every achievement of mine seemed mundane, predictable, or worse, unnoticed entirely. The irony hit hard. I'd built my entire identity around being reliable, responsible, the steady presence who never rocked the boat. And where had that gotten me? 28 years old, buried in student loans, living paycheck to paycheck, with nothing but a stolen inheritance and fraudulent debt to show for it. That inheritance, though, it haunted me. Why had nobody ever told me about it? Why had Grandma Iris assumed I knew? It hurt, deeply, realizing how casually my family had concealed something meant explicitly for my future. It wasn't just financial, it symbolized their total disregard for me, their assumption that I simply didn't matter enough to even inform. I stood up abruptly, pacing the small room, my bare feet padding quietly against the worn carpet. I needed clarity, evidence, anything concrete to confront this betrayal head-on. Pulling out my laptop, I started digging through my credit reports, each click of the mouse a bitter revelation. There it was. Thousands upon thousands of dollars in debt, credit cards I never opened, loans I never signed for. My hands trembled, heart pounding as I pieced together the timeline. 6 full years of fraudulent transactions. Designer boutiques, exotic vacations, even a luxury spa retreat. All while I'd been working grueling shifts, desperately trying to pay down legitimate debt. But worse, far worse, was seeing that my parents had co-signed some of these accounts. My vision blurred with tears of fury and humiliation. They hadn't just ignored Haley's betrayal, they'd actively enabled it, probably rationalizing that I'd never notice or complain. Sitting back overwhelmed, I stared blankly at the screen, rage mixed with profound grief as I realized the depth of my family's indifference. It wasn't ignorance, it was willful blindness. They'd chosen Haley's comfort over my well-being, repeatedly, without hesitation. But something else rose from beneath the bitterness, a spark of determination. For years, I'd quietly accepted their dismissals, hoping to earn their love and approval through silent perseverance. But now, that quiet Lauren, the one who bent and yielded to maintain harmony, was gone. They were about to meet a Lauren they'd never seen before, one unafraid to demand respect and justice. My shift at the hospital passed in a haze the next day, every beep of monitors and whispered consultation barely registering over the storm brewing inside me. All I could think about was how deeply Haley's betrayal cut, and how blind I'd been to it. But beneath the hurt, beneath the anger, something else was building. Resolve. I spent my lunch break in the tiny nurse's lounge, hunched over a notebook, methodically plotting my next move. It wasn't enough to just confront Haley and my parents. I needed proof so damning they couldn't dismiss or deny it. I needed an airtight case. That afternoon, as soon as my shift ended, I dove headfirst into gathering evidence. Armed with a freshly brewed pot of coffee, my laptop, and a stack of documents from my credit history, I meticulously mapped out every transaction, every fraudulent account, every piece of my stolen identity. One particular credit card stood out. A platinum-level account opened 4 years earlier, drained on lavish trips to Miami, designer clothing boutiques, and exclusive restaurants I'd never heard of. It was infuriating and oddly surreal, piecing together the glamorous life my sister had funded entirely through lies. Clicking through photos on Haley's social media felt like twisting a knife. Smiling selfies from luxury resorts, candid snaps with friends at trendy bars, perfectly posed images of her holding expensive handbags, all paid for by draining my financial stability and dreams of a debt-free life. I clenched my fists, breathing slowly to contain my fury. Haley had built her entire flashy persona at my expense, and my parents had either willingly turned a blind eye or actively enabled her. Every time she returned from a spontaneous getaway, they'd gushed about her adventurous spirit, while I worked endless overtime shifts, barely scraping by. By midnight, my desk was cluttered with highlighted documents, printed statements, and a carefully compiled spreadsheet of every fraudulent purchase. My phone buzzed, startling me out of my intense focus. A text from Haley flashed on the screen. "Hey Lore, we good? Grandma's brunch was wild lol. Let's talk soon?" The audacity stunned me. Her casual attempt at damage control was nauseating, as if our relationship could be mended by ignoring the devastating elephant in the room. I left the message unread, anger simmering beneath my skin. Sipping cold coffee, eyes strained from hours of meticulous record-keeping, I realized I had all I needed for an undeniable confrontation. But a deeper realization suddenly struck me. It wasn't just about confronting Haley. It was about confronting my entire family's twisted dynamic, their complicity in my invisibility, their relentless favoritism that had allowed Haley's betrayal to fester unchecked. My heart raced as I contemplated the next step. Confronting them directly would mean risking total estrangement. But wasn't that exactly what I'd always feared anyway? I'd tiptoed around their feelings, afraid to disrupt their perfect image of Haley. Afraid they'd reject me for daring to rock the boat. But now, knowing they'd quietly sanctioned years of identity theft, my fear evaporated. If choosing silence meant losing myself, then choosing confrontation meant reclaiming who I was. And that was no longer negotiable. Closing my laptop, I leaned back, a strange calm settling over me. I wouldn't allow myself to be invisible anymore, wouldn't allow Haley or my parents to dismiss me, diminish me, or silence me. Tomorrow evening, at our annual family dinner, the one gathering I'd dreaded year after year, I would finally speak the truth. And this time, they wouldn't be able to look away. Standing in front of my bedroom mirror, I adjusted the collar of my blouse, trying desperately to steady the nerves fluttering beneath my skin. Tonight's family dinner loomed ominously, like the dark edge of a storm. My stomach twisted sharply at the thought of sitting across from Haley, watching her smile sweetly, pretending everything was fine, pretending she hadn't systematically dismantled my life. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom. "Don't be late, Lauren. Haley has exciting news to share tonight." My heart sank. Of course she did. Haley always had exciting news, some trivial triumph that my family would celebrate as if she'd cured a disease. Would they even notice if I didn't show up? Probably not. But tonight, missing dinner wasn't an option. Tonight was my chance to finally reclaim my voice, my dignity, and my life. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the thick file of evidence I'd painstakingly compiled, credit statements, loan documents, highlighted transactions, and slipped it into my bag. It felt strangely heavy, a tangible representation of years of deceit and betrayal. But it also felt like strength, proof that I wasn't imagining things, proof they couldn't ignore. Driving to my parents' house felt surreal. The familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood blurred past, memories of countless dinners, birthdays, and holidays flooding my mind, all tainted now by the undeniable knowledge that I'd always been the outsider, quietly dismissed, expected to keep silent for the sake of family harmony. Pulling into the driveway, I paused, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Inside the brightly lit house, through the big bay window, I saw Haley laughing animatedly with Mom and Dad, already basking in the attention. My stomach churned again, but beneath the nausea, determination burned bright. "You've got this," I whispered to myself, stepping out into the cool evening air. My footsteps felt oddly loud on the concrete walkway, heart thudding heavily with each step closer to the front door. I barely knocked before it swung open, Mom standing there, her smile warm but guarded. "Lauren, we wondered if you'd actually show up," she said lightly, her tone teasing but laced with underlying criticism. I forced a polite smile. "Wouldn't miss it." Inside, the scene was painfully familiar. Haley sat at the dining table, impeccably dressed as always, chatting excitedly to our Aunt Donna, who listened raptly. Dad stood near the bar cart, mixing drinks, his eyes lighting up when Haley laughed. The glow of their pride felt like salt in an open wound. "Lauren," Haley called out cheerily, waving me over. "Come sit by me, I can't wait to share my news." I bit my lip, resisting the urge to snap at her right then. Instead, I nodded stiffly and took a seat beside her, feeling every eye at the table glance briefly my way before swiftly returning their focus to Haley. As dinner plates were served, conversation flowed around me. each story and anecdote underscoring just how invisible I'd become. Haley's news turned out to be another extravagant vacation planned, an all-inclusive Caribbean cruise. "Haley, you live such an exciting life," Aunt Donna gushed. "Lauren, you really should take a page from your sister's book. You never go anywhere exciting." Anger bubbled inside me, my fingers gripping the fork tightly enough to hurt. But this time, I didn't shrink into silence. This time, I cleared my throat and smiled thinly, eyes locked firmly on Haley's face. "Actually, Aunt Donna, Haley's exciting lifestyle is exactly what I wanted to talk about tonight," I said calmly, feeling a rush of adrenaline as every conversation abruptly stopped, head swiveling in my direction. Haley's eyes widened nervously, her smile faltering slightly. "Lauren, what's going on?" "I think you know exactly what's going on," I replied, heart hammering in my chest as I reached into my bag and placed the file firmly onto the table. "You've stolen my identity for 6 years, Haley, and tonight, everyone's going to hear exactly how you did it." The stunned silence that followed was deafening and deeply satisfying. For a heartbeat, the dining room was deathly silent, each face frozen in varying states of shock. Haley stared at me, mouth slightly open, eyes darting between my face and the thick folder I'd placed firmly on the table. Mom's wineglass paused midair, lips parted in disbelief. Dad slowly lowered his fork, confusion creasing his forehead. Then, predictably, Haley laughed, a forced, hollow sound that echoed painfully through the tense quiet. "Oh my God, Lauren, stop being so dramatic," she scoffed, shaking her head dismissively. "Identity theft? Are you serious right now?" "I'm completely serious," I responded, voice steady despite my racing pulse. "And I have the receipts to prove it." Mom glanced between Haley and me, visibly uncomfortable. "Lauren, sweetheart," she said cautiously, her voice artificially gentle, "I'm sure there's a misunderstanding here. Haley would never—" "Wouldn't she?" I interrupted sharply, opening the folder and sliding a series of documents across the polished oak table. My fingers trembled slightly, but my gaze remained firm. 6 years of credit cards, luxury vacations, designer clothes, nearly $100,000 of debt, all accumulated in my name, without my knowledge. The air thickened with tension as Haley reached slowly for one of the statements, her eyes scanning quickly before widening with panic. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across her carefully composed face. This isn't what it looks like," Haley stammered, her voice suddenly weak and unsteady. "Lauren, please, this can't be right." Dad's face darkened, his confusion rapidly morphing into anger, but not at Haley. Instead, his sharp gaze pinned me down like an accusation. "Lauren, is this really necessary? Ruining a family dinner just to embarrass your sister?" I clenched my jaw, fury simmering beneath my skin. Even now, confronted with indisputable proof, his first instinct was to shield Haley, to cast me as the troublemaker. "This isn't about embarrassment," I said coldly, fighting the bitter tears burning behind my eyes. "This is my life, my financial future, ruined by years of fraud. How can you still defend her?" Mom's eyes flickered nervously toward our stunned relatives, their whispers audible now, scandalized murmurs bouncing quietly around the room. "Lauren, lower your voice," she hissed sharply. "We can discuss this privately. There's no need to involve everyone." "Discuss privately?" My voice cracked, raw emotion breaking through despite my efforts to remain composed. "You mean sweep it under the rug like always?" Aunt Donna awkwardly cleared her throat, trying to diffuse the tension. "Maybe Lauren is mistaken." "I'm not mistaken," I snapped, slamming another sheet onto the table. "Here's the inheritance Grandma Iris mentioned. Money meant for me, drained systematically by Haley. You all knew, didn't you? Yet you sat here year after year, praising her extravagance, ignoring my struggles." Haley's face had drained of all color, her eyes pleading silently with our parents for rescue. Mom sighed deeply, exasperation evident. "Lauren, why would you do this now? Tonight was supposed to be special." "Special for who exactly?" I countered bitterly. "Haley, who's been living a fantasy life off my stolen identity, or you two, who enabled her every step of the way?" Dad stood abruptly, face red with embarrassment and anger. "Enough, Lauren, you've made your point, but airing family business publicly like this, it's unforgivable." "No," I retorted sharply, feeling an unexpected strength flood my veins. "What's unforgivable is how easily you've all disregarded me year after year. What's unforgivable is you choosing lies over me." The silence stretched painfully long. Haley, tears forming theatrically in her eyes, sniffled softly. "Lauren, please. Can we just talk privately? You're hurting everyone." "No," I said clearly, my voice echoing powerfully through the stunned room. "You've hurt me for years, Haley, and I'm done protecting." For the first time in my life, surrounded by shocked faces and scandalized whispers, I stood unashamed, refusing to retreat into silence. Tonight, the truth was finally louder than their lies. Every eye at the table bore into me, but I refused to flinch. Dad's jaw twitched, anger and humiliation radiating from him, while Mom stared at her lap, visibly shaken yet clearly unwilling to stand with me. The tension was suffocating, pressing down on the room until I felt I might snap beneath it. But Haley's expression struck deepest. Eyes wide, lips trembling slightly, disbelief mixing with desperation, as if I'd betrayed her, not the other way around. Dad finally broke the silence, his voice low and cold. "Lauren, you've made your choice clear tonight. If you're determined to drag this family through the mud, to hurt your sister publicly like this, then perhaps it's time you understood the consequences." My breath caught painfully in my chest, heart sinking even though I'd anticipated this reaction. I forced myself to hold his icy gaze, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. "Consequences?" I repeated quietly, daring him to continue. He didn't hesitate. "If you're going to wage war on your family, then you're on your own. We've tried to support you, tried to accommodate your constant bitterness and resentment, but enough is enough. Consider yourself cut off." Mom nodded softly beside him, avoiding my gaze. "Lauren, maybe someday you'll see how selfish this was, destroying your sister's reputation and ours just to make yourself feel important." Selfish? After everything they'd allowed Haley to do to me, after years of quietly bearing their neglect, I was selfish? Haley sniffled dramatically, mascara-streaked tears staining her cheeks as she reached for our mother's hand. "I don't even know why Lauren hates me so much," she whispered, her voice breaking theatrically. "I've always just tried to live my life. How could you do this?" My vision blurred with tears of rage and disbelief. It was surreal, watching Haley effortlessly shift into victimhood, the family quickly rallying around her, just like they always had. Dad placed a protective hand on Haley's shoulder, looking back at me with open hostility. "You're no longer welcome here, Lauren. If hurting your sister means so much to you, then clearly this isn't your family anymore." His words stabbed deeply, slicing through years of denial, shattering the illusion I'd clung to, that deep down, beneath it all, they truly loved me. A profound loneliness threatened to consume me, but I straightened my spine, reminding myself why I'd spoken up at all. "I didn't destroy this family," I said firmly, voice trembling slightly with the rawness of the truth. "Your lies and Haley's betrayal did. I only exposed it." Mom's voice wavered, barely audible. "Please just leave, Lauren. Haven't you done enough damage tonight?" I stood slowly, heart heavy yet strangely free. "Fine," I replied quietly, lifting my chin defiantly. "But remember, you chose this. You chose Haley's lies over me, her comfort over my future." Turning to leave, my chest ached with grief, anger, and an unexpected sense of liberation. The family I'd spent my life trying to impress, the people I'd bet myself backwards for. Tonight, they'd finally shown their true colors. I reached for my bag, feeling their judgmental stares boring holes into my back. But as I neared the door, Aunt Donna's whispered comment cut sharply through the silence. "I always knew Lauren would tear this family apart." Pausing briefly, I turned back, meeting her disdainful gaze with steady resolve. "No," I said clearly, voice unwavering. "You tore me apart. I just finally stopped letting you." And with that, I stepped out into the cool night air, shutting the door firmly behind me. Standing alone on the front steps, I took a deep, shaky breath, the enormity of what I'd just done hitting me with dizzying force. I'd lost my family, but perhaps they'd never truly been mine to begin with. Still trembling, I reached for my phone to call a cab, when suddenly it rang, vibrating sharply in my hand. Confused, I glanced down, my breath hitching in surprise when I saw the unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. Little did I know, in that moment of deepest rejection, that call would change everything. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the unknown number flashing urgently across my phone screen. Hands still shaking from the confrontation I'd just walked away from, I hesitated briefly before swiping to answer. Hello? My voice trembled, betraying my vulnerability despite the bold front I'd managed moments earlier. A professional, gentle voice greeted me. Miss Whitaker, my name is Meredith Shaw. I'm an attorney representing your grandmother, Iris Whitaker. Instantly, my stomach twisted. Was Grandma Iris okay? After the explosive brunch and tonight's drama, I suddenly worried something had happened. Is Grandma all right? I asked quickly, anxiety evident. Oh, she's perfectly fine, Meredith reassured me warmly. But she's been deeply concerned about your situation. She's asked me to intervene regarding your sister's financial activities. My heart pounded rapidly, pulse roaring in my ears. Grandma had seen through everything, through the lies, the favoritism, and she'd acted, quietly, effectively. Tears stung my eyes, relief mixing with a gratitude so intense it nearly overwhelmed me. I've reviewed the documents your grandmother provided, as well as some additional evidence you've apparently compiled yourself, Meredith continued, her voice steady and comforting. Lauren, this is clearly identity theft and financial fraud. You have a very strong case. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The validation felt surreal. After years of feeling invisible, dismissed, even disowned, someone had finally recognized my truth, clearly and unequivocally. I don't even know where to begin, I finally whispered, voice choked with emotion. You don't have to do anything tonight, Meredith said soothingly. But your grandmother wanted you to know immediately that she's behind you fully. She's decided to restore your entire inheritance, plus funds to clear all fraudulent debts. My knees weakened suddenly and I leaned against the railing for support, the cool night air biting gently at my tear-streaked face. It was all too much to absorb at once, the weight of betrayal lifting so suddenly that I felt dizzy. She's serious? I asked faintly, barely daring to hope. Completely, Meredith replied firmly. She's already transferred funds into a protected account in your name. We'll start legal proceedings against your sister immediately. Rest assured, justice will be served. Hearing those words, justice will be served, sent a shiver of empowerment through me. For the first time in my life, someone wasn't merely dismissing my pain or minimizing Haley's actions. Someone, my grandmother, had stepped forward to fight alongside me. Thank you, I said shakily, wiping tears from my cheeks. Tell Grandma Iris I can't thank her enough. I will, Meredith said softly. But she insisted I tell you something else, Lauren. She said she's proud of you for finally standing up, for speaking your truth. She wants you to know you never deserved this treatment. The tears fell freely then, the gentle validation from Grandma Iris melting years of hurt and self-doubt. In the darkness outside my childhood home, now more distant than ever, I felt an unexpected warmth begin to rebuild inside me. This was the turning point, the moment my story shifted from victimhood to strength. Thank you, I repeated, stronger this time. What happens next? Next, Meredith said confidently, we make it abundantly clear to Haley and your parents that accountability isn't optional. I'll handle the details legally, but your voice, your courage, those are yours alone. Hold on to that. Ending the call, I stood there in the silence, looking up at the clear night sky, breath slowly returning to normal. Despite the fresh pain of my family's rejection, I felt a powerful sense of hope rising within me. This wasn't just about money or revenge. It was about reclaiming myself, my future, and finally stepping out from the shadows of invisibility. Tonight had cost me dearly, but what I'd gained was priceless. The knowledge that my voice mattered, my pain was real, and that, even if my biological family turned their backs, I wasn't truly alone. Justice was coming, and I was ready to meet it head-on. Just as Meredith promised, the legal wheels began turning rapidly over the following days. While my phone filled up with frantic calls and texts from Haley and my parents, begging me to reconsider, pleading for forgiveness, I kept my boundaries firm, refusing to respond. I needed to protect myself, to hold steady against the tide of guilt and manipulation they tried so hard to wash over. Exactly 1 week after the disastrous dinner, Meredith arranged a mediation at her downtown office. I arrived early, nerves fluttering uncomfortably, though beneath the anxiety, a newfound strength still burned brightly. When my family entered the small conference room, the tension was palpable. Mom's eyes were puffy from crying, Haley's face carefully composed in contrite innocence, and Dad's posture stiff, with barely contained resentment. Grandma Iris, however, sat beside me. Her steady, reassuring presence the anchor I desperately needed. Meredith calmly outlined the evidence again, each carefully documented financial betrayal punctuated with uncomfortable silence from my family. Haley's expression shifted rapidly from feigned remorse to genuine panic as the scale of her deception was laid bare. Finally, Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. "Lauren, we understand you're upset." "Upset?" I echoed sharply, incredulous laughter bubbling dangerously in my throat. "Upset doesn't even scratch the surface. You all knowingly allowed Haley to ruin my credit, steal my inheritance, and destroy my trust. You chose her comfort over my future, every single time." Haley leaned forward dramatically, her voice cracking theatrically. "Lauren, I made mistakes, I admit that. But we're family. Can't we move past this? I promise I'll repay every dollar." Her rehearsed apology rang hollow in my ears. I shook my head slowly, meeting her pleading gaze steadily. "This isn't about the money, Haley. It's about accountability. It's about the years you spent taking from me without hesitation or remorse." Mom's voice was quiet, trembling with emotion. "Lauren, please. We didn't realize it had gone this far." Grandma Iris scoffed sharply, speaking for the first time. "Oh, you knew, Alice, you just didn't want to face the truth." Silence stretched painfully again before Dad finally spoke, bitterness dripping from every word. "So what exactly do you want, Lauren? To see your sister in jail? To ruin her life?" "No," I replied evenly, the calmness of my voice surprising even me. "I want justice. I want acknowledgement. And most importantly, I want respect." Meredith gently interjected, explaining the terms clearly. Repayment of all debts incurred, restoration of my stolen inheritance, and a public acknowledgement from Haley about her wrongdoing. The terms were firm, non-negotiable, and exactly what I deserved. Haley paled visibly, clearly horrified by the prospect of openly admitting her guilt. "Lauren, that would humiliate me. Can't we just settle privately?" "Your humiliation?" I challenged, voice rising slightly, fueled by years of suppressed hurt. "You had no trouble humiliating me for 6 years. Every purchase, every vacation, paid for by stealing my name, my credit, my future." I rose from my chair slowly, the quiet dignity of standing firm washing over me. "This isn't negotiable. Take accountability publicly or face criminal charges, your choice." Dad stood abruptly, anger flaring. "You're being unreasonable." "No," I replied calmly, the strength in my voice surprising everyone, including myself. "What's unreasonable is expecting me to quietly accept years of betrayal just so you can maintain appearances." Mom reached out weakly toward me. "Lauren, please." I held up my hand firmly. "You've made your choice and I've made mine. Accept these terms or prepare yourselves for a very public, very painful legal battle." Silence followed me as I turned to leave, the stunned expressions of my family imprinting deeply in my memory. Grandma Iris touched my arm gently as we walked out together, her quiet pride infusing me with courage. "You did the right thing," she whispered softly. "I'm so proud of you, Lauren." In that moment, stepping out into the sunlight beside the only family member who'd truly stood by me, I knew I'd finally shattered the toxic mold I'd lived in for far too long. I was done hiding, done accepting less than I deserved. From now on, I chose truth over comfort, and myself over their hypocrisy. That evening, my apartment felt different somehow. Brighter, lighter, as if I'd shaken off years of accumulated shadows. The adrenaline from the mediation still hummed through my veins, making it impossible to sit still. I paced slowly, the wooden floor creaking softly beneath my bare feet. For the first time, I could clearly see how much energy I'd wasted, desperately trying to fit into a family that never truly valued me. Just as I reached for my phone, debating whether to call someone or simply collapse into bed, there was a soft knock at my door. Opening it, I found my closest friends, Kendra, my fellow nurse who'd endured countless late shifts by my side, and Sam and Drew, the college roommates who'd remained steadfastly loyal over the years. Kendra lifted a bottle of wine in cheerful triumph. "We heard you took your power back today. Thought you could use some company." I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, relief washing over me in warm, comforting waves. "You guys have perfect timing." They crowded into my tiny living room, laughter and warmth immediately filling the space. Within moments, we settled around my worn-out couch, glasses filled, and I found myself recounting every tense, empowering detail of the mediation. As I spoke, their reactions mirrored my emotions perfectly. Shock, anger, validation, and finally deep pride. Kendra squeezed my shoulder gently, her voice fierce with loyalty. "Lauren, you deserved so much better from them, but honestly, look around, this is your real family." The truth in her words resonated deeply. My biological family had offered only conditional affection, always dependent on silence, compliance, invisibility. But these three, sitting with me now in this humble space, had always accepted me fully. No conditions, no strings attached. "I think that's what finally clicked for me today," I admitted quietly. "I've spent my whole life chasing their approval, terrified of losing it. But losing them actually gave me clarity. You guys, Grandma Iris, you're the family I choose." Drew raised his glass, smiling warmly. "To chosen families, may they always outshine the ones we're born into." We clinked glasses softly, the gentle sound ringing clear and sweet. In the hours that followed, stories flowed freely, laughter echoed easily, and the tightness in my chest gradually eased, replaced by genuine joy. Later, as Kendra washed dishes in my tiny kitchen, she spoke quietly. "Lauren, watching you fight back, it's honestly inspired me to start facing things I've been avoiding. If you can confront your family like that, I can handle my own stuff." Hearing that moved me deeply, realizing my courage wasn't only healing me, it had the potential to empower others too. After they left, I sank onto my couch, the apartment now quiet again, but filled with a profound sense of peace. I closed my eyes, replaying every moment of the night. This was what family felt like: support, acceptance, genuine connection. There was no room for conditional love or manipulative guilt here. In the glow of the small lamp beside me, I picked up my phone, noticing several missed calls and pleading texts from Haley, each more desperate than the last. I felt a faint pang of sorrow for her inability to truly comprehend the pain she'd caused, for our broken bond, but it passed swiftly, replaced by certainty. Setting my phone aside, I understood clearly that my energy would no longer be wasted chasing reconciliation with people who refused accountability. My chosen family had proven tonight that real love required no sacrifice of self-worth, no painful invisibility. Tomorrow I'd begin outlining clear boundaries, legal, emotional, financial, finally building a life on my terms, no longer trapped within their distorted expectations. Tonight, though, I allowed myself the comfort of this newfound clarity. Here in my small, safe space, surrounded by echoes of authentic laughter and support, I realized I'd finally come home, not to them, but to myself. The days after the mediation brought a flurry of phone calls, texts, and emails, some from extended family eager for gossip, others from Haley and my parents, their desperation increasingly evident as they realized I wasn't backing down. Meredith handled the legal aspects with steely efficiency, quickly securing my inheritance and beginning the formal process of clearing every fraudulent debt Haley had saddled me with. But the emotional work, the tough, relentless setting of new boundaries, was entirely up to me. One evening, after another exhausting shift at the hospital, I sat down at my kitchen table, my phone vibrating insistently. Another text from Mom flashed on the screen. "Lauren, please stop this. Haley is devastated. Families shouldn't treat each other like enemies." I stared at the words, frustration simmering just beneath my skin. For a moment, old habits whispered in my ear, urging me toward guilt, compromise, peacekeeping. But I knew better now. Taking a deep breath, I typed my reply clearly and simply: "Family shouldn't steal from each other either. If Haley wants peace, she can publicly take accountability. Until then, respect my boundaries and stop contacting me." My finger hovered briefly before hitting send. Once the message delivered, I immediately blocked her number. My heart pounded, a mix of anxiety and empowerment swirling inside me. Setting firm boundaries felt oddly foreign, even uncomfortable, but it was absolutely necessary. Meredith advised me early on that complete transparency about Haley's fraud would not only legally protect me, but also emotionally strengthen my stance. So with her guidance, I posted a clear, concise statement online, detailing the identity theft, my family's complicity, and my decision to hold Haley legally accountable. Initially, anxiety gripped me, anticipating judgment, backlash, or worse, indifference. But the response was overwhelmingly supportive. Messages poured in from old classmates, distant acquaintances, and even strangers, sharing similar experiences, offering encouragement and validation. I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. I began carefully curating who had access to me, deleting contacts who never genuinely cared, unfollowing people whose posts fed my insecurities or reinforced toxic family patterns. Each deliberate choice felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd long abandoned. My new rules were clear and simple: honesty, mutual respect, and accountability. Anyone unwilling to honor them had no place in my life. 2 weeks after mediation, Haley finally posted a carefully worded public apology, admitting wrongdoing, expressing regret, clearly coached to minimize her actions. The comments flooded with skepticism and criticism. For the first time, she experienced genuine accountability, not just from me, but from the world she'd tried so hard to impress. Mom and Dad remained stubbornly silent, their pride evidently wounded beyond reconciliation. Strangely, I found I didn't miss their superficial presence anymore. Without their constant judgment clouding my mind, a weight lifted, allowing room for new clarity and genuine growth. One afternoon, sitting quietly in my apartment, Grandma Iris stopped by unexpectedly, smiling warmly as she handed me a beautifully wrapped package. Inside was a framed photograph, me at 10 years old, laughing freely, eyes bright with unguarded joy. "You deserve to find that girl again," Grandma whispered softly, eyes shining with gentle pride. "She never needed their approval. Neither do you." Holding the photo tightly, tears welled up, gratitude overwhelming me. Grandma Iris had become my rock, quietly guiding me towards strength, healing, and a renewed sense of self-worth. That night, as I hung the picture prominently above my desk, I realized something profound had shifted inside me. Boundaries weren't merely protective walls, they were bridges toward genuine freedom, allowing me space to heal, grow, and reconnect with who I truly was. As difficult as this chapter had been, I felt a powerful sense of peace, knowing I'd never again settle for invisibility or betrayal. The fortress I'd built wasn't isolating, it was empowering. Each boundary clearly marked what I'd no longer tolerate, guiding me toward authentic relationships built on respect and truth. The girl in the photograph smiled down at me, reminding me daily I was finally safe within myself. With each passing week, the fortress of boundaries I'd constructed became stronger, clearer, more natural. The anxiety and emotional exhaustion of constantly managing my family's reactions gradually faded, replaced by a steady, quiet confidence in my decisions. Meredith had worked diligently to secure every stolen cent, finally restoring my inheritance and repairing my credit, piece by painstaking piece. Now that my financial security was restored, I realized something else still needed reclaiming: my legacy. I'd spent years defined by my family's expectations, overshadowed by their choices and betrayals. It was time to redefine my name on my own terms. Late one night, curled up on my couch with my laptop, inspiration struck. I opened a fresh document, the blinking cursor waiting patiently as I typed, the Whitaker Resilience Scholarship. My fingers trembled slightly, excitement and purpose blooming within me. I began outlining details. A scholarship dedicated to supporting students who, like me, had overcome family betrayal or financial abuse to pursue their education and dreams. It felt profoundly healing, turning my pain into something positive, something meaningful. The next morning, I called Grandma Iris to share my idea, nerves fluttering as I explained. Her voice warmed instantly with approval. "Lauren, that's beautiful. It's exactly the legacy you deserve." Buoyed by her encouragement, I threw myself into bringing the scholarship to life. Each step, filing paperwork, consulting Meredith on legal details, setting clear eligibility criteria, was a reminder that my legacy was no longer dictated by Haley's betrayal or my parents' neglect. This was mine alone, built on strength, accountability, and compassion. When I announced the scholarship publicly, the response was overwhelming. Emails flooded in from students bravely sharing their stories, expressing gratitude for finally feeling seen. One message in particular stood out. A young woman named Morgan wrote, "Reading your story gave me the courage to speak up about my own family's financial abuse. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone." Tears blurred my vision, deeply moved by her bravery and vulnerability. I'd started this journey simply to reclaim what had been taken from me, never imagining my courage would ripple outward, empowering others to reclaim their own voices. A month after launching the scholarship, I received an invitation to speak at a local high school about financial empowerment and resilience. Walking onto the small auditorium stage, my heart pounded nervously, But the moment I met the students' eager gazes, determination filled me. As I shared my journey openly, without shame, without hesitation, I saw their faces shift from polite interest to genuine understanding. Afterward, a girl shyly approached, tears in her eyes. "Your family sounds just like mine," she whispered, voice quivering. "I thought I had to endure it silently forever. Now I know I don't." Hearing her words, witnessing her quiet strength, I felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. My pain, my struggle had transformed into something powerful, something meaningful. I'd reclaimed my name not through revenge, but through resilience, empathy, and unwavering truth. Later that night, sitting alone in my apartment, the quiet settling around me comfortably, I reflected deeply. The scholarship had never been about punishing Haley or my parents. It had always been about reclaiming myself, my worth, and my story. I'd finally stepped out from beneath their shadow, standing firmly in my own light. For the first time, my surname, Whitaker, didn't sting with memories of betrayal. Instead, it resonated with strength, courage, and quiet triumph. I'd rewritten my family's legacy, not for them, but for me, for Morgan, and for everyone brave enough to speak their truth. My identity was finally mine alone, a legacy of healing rather than hurt. And in that realization, I found something I'd searched for my entire life: genuine peace. It hit me clearly one quiet morning as I stood in my kitchen, sipping coffee, sunlight filtering softly through the window. I glanced around, feeling the comforting stillness of my own space. My apartment, once a tiny refuge from the noise of family conflict, had become a sanctuary, a place where peace flourished freely. But the true transformation wasn't in the room itself, it was inside me. Reflecting back over the last several months, I felt profound gratitude. Not for the pain I'd endured, but for the strength it had uncovered in me. I'd spent years seeking approval, validation, acceptance, as if they were treasures buried somewhere outside myself. But now, standing quietly in my own kitchen, I finally understood. Everything I'd ever needed had been within me all along. A gentle knock pulled me from my thoughts. Opening the door, Grandma Iris smiled warmly, eyes bright with affectionate pride. She held out a small velvet box, her voice soft with emotion. "I think it's time you have this." Inside, nestled on satin lining, was an antique silver necklace, a delicate pendant engraved simply with the word, strength. "This was mine," she explained gently. "I wore it through the hardest times of my life. But now it's yours, Lauren. You've earned it." Tears blurred my vision as I hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by the gesture and the meaning behind it. Slipping the necklace around my neck, I felt an immediate sense of connection, not just to Grandma but to myself, to the woman I'd become through all the struggles. In the weeks following, I moved forward confidently, guided by newfound self-awareness. Invitations from distant family members or obligatory events no longer carried emotional weight. I attended only if they genuinely mattered to me. The quiet freedom of self-validation had replaced the desperate need for their acknowledgement. One afternoon, I walked into a local cafe for an interview, a small, heartfelt piece about my journey and the scholarship program. The reporter, a kind-eyed woman named Hannah, asked softly, "Lauren, after everything, do you ever miss your old life?" I smiled slowly, shaking my head. Not at all. My old life was built around pleasing others, trying desperately to fit into a mold I never belonged in. My new life, this one, is about truth, authenticity, real happiness. She scribbled a few notes, then paused thoughtfully. "And your family? Do you think reconciliation is ever possible?" I considered the question carefully, then answered honestly. "Maybe, but only if they're willing to truly see me. I won't ever shrink myself again just to fit their expectations. I've learned my worth isn't up for negotiation." Leaving the cafe, my heart felt lighter than ever. My truth was clear, my boundaries secure, and the peace I'd discovered was finally unshakable. Later that night, curled comfortably on my couch, I found myself reflecting deeply once more. I realized finally that the pain of betrayal and rejection hadn't defined me. It had shaped me, revealed my deepest strength. I'd lost the family I'd been born into, but in doing so, I'd found myself. The necklace hung gently around my neck, a subtle reminder of the journey I'd taken, the courage I'd discovered, and the quiet resilience that would forever guide me forward. I closed my eyes, taking a slow, steady breath, feeling a calm certainty fill my heart. The validation I'd once sought desperately from others was now firmly rooted inside me. I was no longer the family outcast, the overlooked daughter, or the victim of betrayal. I was Lauren Whitaker, strong, empowered, and beautifully whole. And for the first time in my life, I was truly at peace. Have you ever felt invisible within your own family? Ever found yourself endlessly chasing approval only to realize you never needed it in the first place? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Let's create a community of strength, healing, and genuine connection. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Remember, your worth isn't measured by how others see you. It's about recognizing the strength, courage, and value already within yourself. Speak your truth, set your boundaries, and never be afraid to rewrite your legacy. Thank you for listening, for witnessing my story, and for sharing your own. We're stronger together, each of us reclaiming our power, one brave truth at a time.